So I'm based in Toronto, Ontario, and today we're certainly going to cover, I'd like to start with your role as a business owner, because I think that's so critical that we remember where our focus needs to be and what that means. So we're going to start with that. Then we're going to jump into what that profit leak is and why we should care about it, how we can actually identify these profit leaks, and the worksheet's going to help us bucket them into categories where we'll be able to brainstorm some of those, and then how do we actually plug them so that we can actually make strides in our business. So you should be leaving today with at least one or two that you can plug immediately. We're not talking about necessarily making these big, massive changes in our business. Sometimes it's about the small things that can make a big impact. And so this is me. This is my dog, Rosie. I also have a new little pup, Molly. She's 11 weeks, so I'll have to get a picture with her in it too. As Linda mentioned, I'm really passionate about financial fitness. My whole life, money's been very clear to me, and I've had a very unemotional relationship with it. Since the age of 6 or 7 years old, I knew money was the thing that you could use to get stuff or to do things. And so I like to bring that clarity to other people as well. And I've spent my career working with business owners, either directly or indirectly, really helping them get access to the financing that they needed when I was working at the bank. And then I started my own business back in 2016. So I've been working privately with entrepreneurs since that time, and that's really fun for me. And just two fun facts that were impacted by COVID, but I'm hoping this year is going to turn that around, is I love roller coasters. So hoping to get back to amusement parks, and I love live music. So to get back to concerts. So hopefully that is in my future. Now, sometimes when people are running their business, they kind of forget that they're the CEO of everything. And so I want everybody to think about all those areas of your business. And in case it's a news flash, just to be reminded, or it could be the first time you're hearing it, to be accountable for the financial side of your business. It's absolutely critical that you step up and take that accountability. By no means does it mean you need to do it alone. You certainly can work with a bookkeeper, an accountant, a financial coach if you need to, but you own your results, and you need to know your numbers. You need to look at them regularly. And without doing that, it's really hard to drive your results and get to the strategy and execute it the way that you want. And if you're only looking at your numbers kind of 18 months after the beginning of the year, if you're looking 6 months after your year end, you're really looking in the rear view, and you're not being very responsive. And it's hard to be proactive when that's how you're looking at your numbers. So I want to remind everybody that that is your role. And so something I typically see, I talk a lot about biz money mistakes, and I just wanted to highlight the second biggest one I see pretty routinely, in that business owners are focusing only on the top line. And so when I say top line, I mean the sales. Everybody's seen it on social media. They've seen the hype for this launch yielded 7 figures, 6 figures, have 6-figure months every single month of the year. Let's have $1 million month. And that's all great, but nobody seems to talk about how did they get there? What were the costs that were actually incurred to get there? And people don't like to talk about their ad spend. So maybe they did have a $1 million launch in a month or 100,000, but how much was the ad spend to actually generate that? And so I want business owners to focus not only on the top line on sales, but to focus on that bottom line, which is profit. So if we think about the most commonly used financial statement we have in our businesses, it's our income statement, profit and loss, P&L, statement of earnings. It has all kinds of different names. It has sales minus all of our expenses for the period we're looking at, which gives us profit. And I'm here today because I want to make sure that you can really focus and maximize your profit. And so I don't want to see any of you making this mistake around only focusing on the top line and missing out on the bottom line. I've worked with so many customers during the pandemic across all different industries who have actually been able to reduce their sales, right-size their expenses, and actually take home more money and have a very calm business. They weren't as frenzied as they used to be, trying to do all and be all for all people. And so when you get clear on how you make money and how much you can make, you can definitely choose how you're going to be working. Okay, so let's not make this mistake. So let's get into what these profit leaks are. So basically what it is profit that's escaping through an opening, and it's usually by a fault or by a mistake. So anywhere things are leaking out, okay? And the realm of possibilities is really huge of all of these things that could that could happen. Okay. And so why should we care? Well, we might be losing profit. We might be losing cash flow. And for everyone who's focused on growing their business, growth is really hungry, and growth needs capital to fuel it, whether it's through profits retained in the business, access to credit, savings we've built up, injections from shareholders, whatever it may be, but growth is super hungry. I'll date myself because I always think of the video game Pac-Man when I was a kid. Think of that. Growth is coming along, chomping up all those little balls. And so you've got to keep making sure you keep all your cash flow and your profit in your business. Moreover, it can have a negative impact on your prospects, your clients, and your employees. So if somebody's trying to do business with you and it's really hard to get in touch, or they send something through your website and you never receive it and don't follow up, that doesn't create a very good impression. And now you've lost revenue, which would ultimately be profit. With your clients, as they're trying to deal with you, are there inefficiencies? And certainly on your employees. If you've got your employees, whether they be full-time, part-time contractors, and I'm using that term kind of broadly, employees, if you've got them doing something over and over again, or you keep switching gears and they're switching strategy, you're wasting their time. You're making them frustrated with your lack of clarity, and that just churns time and profit lost. Okay. Failure to meet our goals can happen if we're having all this profit escape. Failure to reach our potential. There's so many things that we can do. Everybody here is very smart. Everyone's capable. But if we don't do things properly, we're going to not be able to reach our full potential. And all this kind of adds up to wasted time, wasted energy, and wasted resources. And that's really broad because it can be anything. Our resources can be our time, our talents, our treasures, the people who are supporting us. It could be partners that we work with. And so we want to make sure that we've got all of these possibilities of how this impacts us kind of top of mind before we actually start thinking about what they are. So I'm sure at this moment, you can think of at least one thing where you're like, yeah, that's me. Okay. I know I do a good job of lead generation, but I don't always do a great job of capture, and I don't do always a great job at nurturing my leads. Okay. So I know that about me. Everybody's got some things that they're going to think about. So I'm going to move on to my next slide. And so in terms of the categories, like the broad categories they usually fall into are people, culture, process, and decision-making. And so we think about our sales, we think about our costs, wasted efforts, which can be any which way in our business. Our estimations are doing quotes or proposals for clients. How is this happening with clients and prospects? And then when we actually go to execute things. And so I'm going to shift gears. I'm going to flip over to the worksheet. So you've got the worksheet and I want us to just start at the top. I'm going to walk you through it, and then I'm going to go through in detail because I think it's important that you start visualizing how does this lay out for your business. So as Linda mentioned, we work really hard. It's frustrating to see our profit, cash flow, and other resources be wasted. And so we want to think about, and right now I want you to actually brainstorm current and potential profit leaks in your business. And then we're going to talk about how can we plug them to maximize all our resources. Sorry, somebody just rang my doorbell, which made my little puppy crazy here. All right. So the first profit leak category is sales. So we can think about profitability. We can think about what's our sales process? How do we bring new customers on board? How does that look and feel? Is it painful? Is it easy? What time are we spending on sales? And so as you're thinking about what's going on in your business, is there a current leak? Are you planning to grow and you need to change some things to be able to capture leads and sales at higher levels? And then what is the impact to the business from a time, money, or other resource perspective? Okay, so think about what's going on in your business from the sales. Are you attracting the people, as I said, and then maybe you're not converting them? Maybe there's a conversion problem. So think about the nature of your business and what could be leaking out. And so if you have any questions as we're going through, please drop them in the chat, especially if it's something specific and unique to your business. I can help you kind of talk through it. So if there's something that's popping up, please do drop it in the chat. So the costs, and I'm talking about all the costs. So lots of times I will see people who have high profit in their business, but they're not getting paid. So they're showing a profit, they're not showing a loss. And so I think it's really important that as business owners, we get paid not only for the work that we do, but we actually can take more out because we are running this business and it's our organization. Still keeping in mind, do we have enough to support future growth and operations? And are we going to be able to grow, and are we going to be able to make reinvestment, especially as we scale? As I mentioned, we're going to need capital to be able to fund that growth. So do we have all the costs in? Especially when I compare businesses across industries, some people's numbers look different, but all their costs aren't actually in there. So are all your costs there? Have you examined them? If you've got a list of recurring costs, which I'm sure most of us do, you've got probably at least 20 or 30 things that go through, maybe monthly or it's annual, but you've got these regular things you're paying for. When's the last time you looked at them? Are you using every subscription you ever signed up for? And we need to think about that because we have good intentions. I had a client I was just working with, they had put their money down for 12 months of FreshBooks. They didn't really talk to anybody in advance. FreshBooks, easy for business owners to use, not so great for proper accounting and not so great to work with your accountant. So they were reluctant to cancel that and move on to a more robust software, but they ultimately did. So maybe thinking about if you're going to try something new, should you try it month by month? And once you like it, then go on to an annual subscription. The easiest way to look at your costs, pull out your bills. What's going through your credit card statement every single month? What's going through your bank account? And are they all required? So it's a lot to do all at one time. And so some things are going to come up during the year on kind of a renewal basis. You think about your insurance. Maybe potentially it's a rental agreement. Anything where there's a fixed day, plan 2 months in advance of that to take a look and start digging into, could you get cheaper insurance? Could you change providers? How can you actually approach that to make a meaningful change? And you've got to diarize it. Then the stuff that might be going through monthly, kind of plot it out by month and tackle 1 or 2 every single month. So months where you don't have some of these annual renewal ones coming up, put in some of those monthly ones so that you can take a look. But you've got to get into the details to see. You may even, if you've got a bookkeeper working with you, if you have an accountant, ask them, hey, do you see anything here that seems a little bit out of whack? They're not going to know if you're using things, but certainly they may be able to share their expertise. So is there anything that's not required? If you've been using something for a few years, is there a better version? So take that opportunity to look. Oftentimes when you go to look for either an alternate provider or a different plan with the person you're dealing with, sometimes they have a better plan at a cheaper price. I know I just renegotiated my cell phone bill and I was able to get cheaper monthly rate, more minutes, more coverage outside of Canada for a cheaper price. But I had to ask them. And it took me a couple hours on the phone going through with them and then going through everything on my bill. But that's what you've got to do to be able to make sure you're not leaking profit. Because when you think about it, all that can go either towards reinvestment or it can go into you and personally to help you fund your life. And that it's a little bit of a tangent, but I do want to remind everyone, we do start businesses for the most part to be profitable. Okay. It is to replace income that we would have for a job. And so we need to make sure we do that. And we need to make sure that we're not damaging our personal lives and personal situations because we all have personal commitments. We all have financial goals. We all probably hope to retire at some point in our life. We may have families, whether it's pets in my case that I have had some very expensive vet bills, whether you're saving up for kids' university or college, you've got to be able to fund your life. And so making sure you have a plan in place to do that, and that takes money coming out of the business. So we've got to make sure we're maximizing all of our efforts to keep those funds in the business. So if any questions, please do drop them in the chat. This is interactive. So if you're not sure if something fits or you want to debate it, certainly pop that in the chat. So let's talk about wasted efforts. And as a reminder, what you're doing is outlining, is there a current or potential profit leak? Because before we scale and grow our business, we want to make sure that we've got everything robust so that as we grow, we're not leaking even more funds. And so is there something current or potential, and what's the impact either from a time, money, or resource perspective? So wasted efforts. Do we have roles in our business that are not filled? Are we delaying hiring because it's annoying and frustrating and we don't know how to do it? And last time we did, we had a hard time. Maybe we're hoping we'll have a bit more money before that we make that hire. Anything around that is classified as wasting efforts. How about staff performance? Whether it's a contractor or an employee who's part-time or full-time, are the people living up to the expectations that you set for them? And moreover, did you actually set accountabilities and expectations for them? So if you haven't set expectations and accountability, that's really important. And there's no harm in doing it now. You can basically just tell them you've been revisiting your personal development and you realize to be more effective manager, you're going to start doing this and have regular feedback and conversations around this. But if somebody's not performing well, or they're kind of all over the map because they don't have enough direction, that's wasted efforts, and that costs you money. It costs you money directly from a time perspective because you're paying them, but then it also can impact projects. If one person on the team is always dropping the ball and never delivering what they're supposed to, and it's part of a chain reaction that impacts things on the other people's plate. Maybe if you're trying to launch a new program or launch something new in your business and one person doesn't do what they're supposed to, maybe the date gets delayed. Maybe you miss an opportunity altogether in the market because you were not ready as you needed to be. So anything you can possibly think about with wasted efforts would fall into that category. And I know that I used to, when I was starting my business, I came out of a role at TD where we were doing things for external directors and for the really senior executive of the organization. And TD Bank is an organization, employs 85,000 people around the world. So this was really high level, detailed work, really serious what we were doing for them. And so that became my new standard. I realized pretty quick, if I'm going to do everything perfect in my business, nothing's going to happen here. And so is perfection getting in the way? Are you doing full-blown development of things before you even pitch them to someone? That was a big shift I made, being able to have an outline and a draft, pitch it, see if somebody wants it, and then you can deliver it and build it. So think about that. Yes, absolutely, Maggie. Sometimes trying to learn something ourselves is wasted effort and we need to pay someone who really knows. Yeah, like a lot of business owners I know who tell me they want to do their bookkeeping and they want to learn and they want to do it themselves. And I ask them if they like it, is that their natural skill? And if they say no, I'll tell them to hire someone. Not so they can just push it to the side and forget about it, but so somebody can use only an hour or 2 hours and do it very quickly, and then they can debrief you on the numbers. So that's a good one. So think about what's coming up in terms of wasted efforts. Now, estimations or doing quotations or doing proposals, this is a trap where people waste a lot of time as well. Not only in the process of initially pitching, but when you're actually in a contract. So one of the biggest things I hear from people is, oh my gosh, this contract is taking me so long. The customer keeps adding on this, and this. Okay. So here's what you say when this happens. I'm so glad you're happy with my work. I'm so delighted you want me to help you do more. That is outside the scope of what we contracted. And I'd love to put a proposal together for you for this work if that's something you're interested in. Okay. And so being able to get comfortable having that conversation, it's hard, but certainly very, very necessary. And so sometimes you might point out to them, you know what, this is outside of scope, but it's just a little bit of a deviation. And so we're going to do that. But if it's any more, I'm going to need to charge more, and just so that I'm being upfront with you in terms of expectations. Okay. So that's the first one. Secondly is quoting and then not actually tracking your time for your delivery. So whatever you're doing, if there's some kind of service-based component to it, even if there's a material-based component, you want to outline how you arrived at your estimation for them. And then after the fact, you want to track how much time actually goes against it. Because I think you'll see in most cases, I typically work with business owners, their sales are under $2 million. I would say in 85% of those cases that they're not pricing profitably. And when we start digging into and we examine what's going on, they say something's going to take 10 hours, it takes 25. oh, they thought it was going to cost this. No, it cost a real higher amount. And we know the way life works, everything costs more and takes longer than we think. So let's get clear on our estimations, jot down what we think as we're going through, and as we finish up with a client, let's actually track what happened and see what's going on, so that we can then, the next time we do an estimation or a quote, we can actually be closer to where we need to be. The other thing that kind of comes up with pricing is that I was saying 80 to 85% of those I work with aren't pricing profitably. Largely could be in the service-based industry, but sometimes other types of businesses. They think, well, it's my business. I don't need to charge so much because it's my business. Well, let's pretend you had to pay someone else to do everything that you do when it comes to working with your clients. How much would be the minimum you'd have to pay that person? And it's usually more than you're paying yourself. And if we're not factoring in that at all, then we're definitely underwater on our pricing. So it's okay if you realize, and some of you may be starting your businesses, some of you may be further along. It's really important to actually drill down into your pricing and your costs to make sure you're profitable, so you know what your margin is. So typically we would do sales minus cost of goods sold. So any expenses you need to pay because you're in business and you delivered that sale, we're going to get a gross margin. Then we want to be able to allocate some level of overhead. So the landlord doesn't care if we made a sale, the insurance company doesn't care. We got to pay all those other bills no matter what. So get clear, make sure you're making money. And then it's not necessarily about blowing up the whole business if it's not looking as you want. Maybe it's targeting a different clientele. Maybe it's altering what you sell so that it's a little bit more profitable. Maybe it's positioning it in a different way. Sometimes, especially as women business owners, we don't necessarily fully articulate the value, and we might feel a little bit insecure about what we're talking about. And so let's be clear about the value we're providing. And if it does come with a premium price, why that is and what results and the experience is for the people who buy it. Okay. So keeping all of that in mind. Maggie and Barb know certainly everything, as we've talked about it before, kind of everybody's views on money originate from when we're little kids. And so all of our insecurities start coming up, especially when we start asking people to pay us in our business. And so it may not apply to everyone, but just being mindful of those feelings. If you have them, start observing them, start noticing, so that you can actually make some changes. And if insecurities are popping up, see how you can best deal with that. And so, sometimes it means we might need to limit conversations in our business with our really good friends or our family members who maybe don't understand. And so we want to get helpful, constructive feedback and not necessarily stuff that from people who don't know, even though they have our best interests at heart. So what comes up for you when you think about proposals, estimations, quotes, whatever you want to call it, scope creep? Has anybody had the experience where the scope crept up on them and all of a sudden they're underwater on a contract or a job they were doing? Always. Okay. Barb's saying always. So something to be mindful of. And if once you know that you're vulnerable to it, then you can either pad more in the beginning, or you can start adding, saying, you know what, it's for X hours or it's for X deliverables. And beyond that, you can start adding that kind of language in your contract so that it's clear around what it would cost if they're going to change the scope on you. Okay. No, clients absolutely don't mean to do it. They're happy to work with you. And they're like, oh, they could just do this for me and just do that. And that's great. We want to capitalize on that and thank them for the fact that they like working with us and they're happy with the deliverables that we're doing. But that's out of scope, and we need to be brave and have that conversation. And most of the time the client's like, oh, I didn't realize. Great. Thanks for telling me. How much would that cost? And then they get to decide. We put the decision to them. It's not about making them feel bad. They can decide, do they want it done for that rate? So we need to be clear. Perfect. That's great, Belinda. You have it in your contract if there's more that they need. That's wonderful. All right. So then with clients and prospects, a little bit around the work performed. So that's an overlap. And you'll see that there's some overlap between these categories. Onboarding, how does that go? Is every time you onboard a new client, is it different? Or are we still fumbling around trying to figure out how it goes? This can also be with partners. that we're working with regularly. And then the lead generation. Are we consistently doing it? Are we tracking all of our leads? Are we then nurturing them through a process so that they can become clients down the road? What does your system look like? And certainly we've got to be really nailed in on this and be very clear and be pristine about it if we're going to grow our business. Because we don't want to go out there and whether it's our time, whether we're spending money on ads or however else we're doing it, we don't want to be attracting all these leads and then have a problem in the capture and then keeping them moving through our pipeline so that they do become clients. Okay. So what comes up for you? What can you think about in terms of that lead generation and how do we make sure everything really sticks in there and we're not losing stuff? Because that's just like money blowing away. You want to think about it like leaves. Perfect. So then executive decision execution. So this covers so many categories. If you take a long time to make decisions and all of a sudden your team is waiting, now everything's a rush, we've got wasted efforts there. Communication, if we're not willing to or able to have those tough conversations and those really conversations that require us to be honest upfront, have those discussions, that's going to lead to wasted time, especially if it ties into what we were talking about earlier with employees. If we got a performance issue and we're not communicating clearly, or we're not communicating clearly about what it is we would like someone to do for us, that's all going to lead to issues. Goals and objectives. Do you have them? Have they been communicated to everybody who's working on things? Do they know how their work fits in? And so keeping those goals and objectives top of mind, even if you're a solopreneur who's continuing to grow your business, if you don't have your goals and objectives top of mind, it's really easy to get distracted by all these other things coming at you. I mean, just on LinkedIn alone, you could be driven in 20 different directions every time you go on there, and you might even forget while you went on the platform in that moment. So how do you keep yourself focused on your goals and objectives, and particularly on converting or attracting prospects, converting them to clients, making sure that they're working with you in the best capacity they can and that they're the most profitable. Accountability, I touched on a little bit as well with our team. And so that can be accountability with team. You were going to do X by this date. This is what it was going to look like. Are we doing that? Or are we just kind of throwing out a directive and hoping it comes back to us that way? Can be with our clients as well. I'm doing this, you're doing this. And I do a lot of consulting work with our the Business Development Bank of Canada, which is the bank for entrepreneurs in Canada. And first meeting we have with clients, we walk them through. Here's all the things Tracey's doing. Here's all the things you're doing. Does that seem like something you can do? Are you going to make regular time in your schedule for this? How is this going to go? And sometimes people will be like, wow, I never realized I would have to make this much time, or maybe this is not the right time for me to do this, or she's very serious about this. And even to go on to say, we understand things are busy. You might have to reschedule meetings from time to time. If you don't do it within 48 hours, you lose your session, or there's one free and then you lose your session if it becomes a continual thing. But just being clear with people and then holding them accountable when something happens that's kind of in the rigor of that. And then transparency. What's going on in your business to maybe you need to be a little bit more transparent about? Is it your mission? Is it the work that you do? Is your lack of transparency potentially impacting something from an execution standpoint? Okay, so many of these can overlap in different categories. So we've covered sales, and it can be anything related to sales, can be our costs, could be wasted efforts, estimation, so around our quoting, anything related to clients and prospects, and then around the execution of everything we're doing in our business. So let's see, maybe, I don't think I can do a little poll. Maybe in the chat, if you could say yes, if you have at least one you've come up with. Okay. So give me a yes in the chat if there's at least one thing you've identified that you want to make a change about in your business. Excellent. Perfect. That's great, Debbie, knowing the numbers. Awesome. And so when you scroll down to the bottom of the second page, based on your assessment, what are the immediate profit leaks you can plug? sometimes there's like that one thing you can cancel or this one thing you can do that's going to make a difference. And it may not be like thousands of dollars, but we want to stop all of the leaks. And then what are the potential ones you need to dig into? Where maybe it's a better nurture system, or maybe it's a CRM that you need to be able to keep track of all of your leads. And so think about not only immediately, but what can you do in the longer term? And while you're doing that, think about what's the impact to the business for each one of these. We might be able to knock off a couple easy ones right now that have a small dollar impact. And maybe we do need to work on one for a whole quarter to actually save us a lot of money, or to really strengthen our infrastructure for lead generation and nurturing and client conversion for the growth that we're going to see in our business. So jot down a couple here on the bottom of the page now that you've brainstormed, so that you don't lose focus on terms of the ones that you had in mind and that you were thinking about doing. Okay. And so Jeannie's saying, I do that before I invest in what I do before I invest in a new app, product, or service. If allowed, I will try their free period. Yeah, that's great. Excellent. And then Barb's saying, find ways to keep track of all these. Yeah, that's good. And as I suggested, you might keep a calendar. And so you've got every month some expenses you're going to review. Some you're going to need to do on a defined time period, like insurance, because when the renewal comes, you need to have shopped around before that letter comes in the mail or through your inbox. Other ones, you'll be able to do some due diligence and checking, especially if you're on a monthly fee. You'll be able to see, do I like this? Are there better offerings out in the market? As well as, should I switch to the annual? Because usually when you go on an annual subscription, you're going to save some money. And you just need to make sure you have the cash flow to pay for those bigger outflows in the months that they go through. Yeah, that's great, Belinda. Utilizing a VA for better time utilization. Allison saying, delegate more tasks, freeing up time to spend in more productive ways. And I worked with a business coach for many years, and she would always say, and I still think of it to this day, we need to be making offers every day. And so the form of the offer and the way that we do it to generate sales might be different, but we all need to have the mindset of making offers every day so that we can generate those sales, and then make sure our processes and our activities align with not losing that money out of our business before it gets to the bottom line in terms of profit. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint and we'll get this wrapped up. I think everybody's got a few ideas, which is great. And so I want to talk about how we plug them. And so there is no magic formula, which I think you've got the gist of as we were going through the worksheet. We want to assess the impact of each one, make changes, and engage professionals as needed. So if I need a new CRM or I need my website to be different, it's not good for me to sit there and figure that out and do that. I'm going to have to hire a professional to do that. If it's my bookkeeping, making sure that you're on that. That's a great thing, Belinda. She says, I keep a budget with monthly and annual renewals so I know what's coming and can save. Excellent. Yeah, that's a great practice. And it's not a hard one. So I think you've noticed some of these might take a little bit more time and might be a little bit more complex, but how can we actually get in on the simple things? And it's these small regular activities that are going to do it. So based on your brainstorming, what leaks are happening, what could happen, and then what's the cost? Is it time, money, other resources, or all of those at once? Okay. Now we've really covered today, kind of scratched the surface on the profit leaks. We've talked about your role as a business owner, what that profit leak is, and certainly why you should care. The potential profit leaks across your business, and brainstorm ways that we're going to maximize our efforts to plug them. And so at this point, now what? Okay. So this is how you might be feeling. Some of you might be feeling like I'm on a roller coaster and it opened this crazy situation that you hadn't even turned your mind to before. Or you might be feeling kind of calm. The picture on so I already told you I like roller coasters. So both of these are like happy pictures for me. But I know the roller coasters terrify many. On the right, it's a picture from Flower Pot Rocks in New Brunswick in Canada. And it's a beautiful place. The tide goes up and down very dramatically. So the tide actually would go up to this jut on the rock at some times. So sometimes you can walk there, sometimes you can't. But are you feeling that nice, peaceful, serene feeling? Or you're feeling like, oh my gosh, all of these things are happening and I need to get a handle on it. So I hope the worksheet will help you. You've filled in some of your ideas. you're certainly going to be able to come back to it. And I would even suggest printing it out or keeping it on your phone, or just a list on your phone. So as you keep thinking about this, more ideas are going to come to mind, and you're going to be able to really maximize and get focused. Start with the immediate and then move on to the ones that are going to make the biggest impact from either a time, money, or resource standpoint. Okay. And so would love to take any questions from anybody.